Recording now.
All right, so welcome everyone to the Grown Unschoolers panel. We have a few Grown Unschoolers today that are going to be answering your questions. We have Devin Sheldon, we have Drew Dorsey, and Alex, Julia, and Tony Patterson. So what we'll probably do to start is if you guys want to just briefly introduce yourselves, names, pronouns, just like a really short blip, no more than a minute or two about yourself, and then we'll start taking questions in the chat. Drew, do you want to start us off?
There it goes. Okay. Didn't want to unmute. I'm Drew. I use they, them. I've been unschooling my entire life. And just this past 2 years, I've been at Mount Wachusett Community College for a human service and psychology degree.
Shall we go next? I'm Alex. I use he, him pronouns, and we've always been homeschooling or unschooling, and I never went to college. I am a YouTuber, and yeah, glad to be here. One of triplets. So.
Yeah, I'm Julia. My pronouns are she, her. And it was like roughly 6th grade-ish that we started unschooling, and I'm a dance major.
I'm Tony, the other triplet. My pronouns are he, him, and I am currently in the last semester of college at Goddard College, studying for a degree in socially engaged art.
Devin, you're on mute.
There we go. My name's Devin Sheldon. I use she, her. I've been unschooled since kindergarten, and I graduated community college with an associate's degree in general studies. And I've been working full-time for the past 6 years at a kitchen remodeling company.
So while we wait for a few questions to kind of come into the chat, let me think if we can think of some general prompts to kind of get things started. I guess like just some general advice on, for anybody who's feeling stressed about the idea of becoming a unschooler parent, for those who are new here potentially, do you have like a few words of advice you might give to them?
Go easy on yourself, and you want to parse out what are your doubts about unschooling versus what are your doubts about yourself, because that's an important distinction. And I think every good parent worries about their kids and how they're raising them. But just as much as unschooling is about trusting and respecting your kid, you've also got to trust and respect yourself, and really just believe in the choices you've made, and yeah, go easy on yourself.
I would say make sure you're talking to your kid the entire time. Get some of their feedback, figure out what works for you, what works for them, and try to find a happy middle ground. And if things get bad or rocky, just talk to them, admit that you've made a mistake. They can admit if they did, and move past it in a way that's healthy for both of you.
Yeah, I think a lot of success comes down to having just a good relationship with your children. And so if there's clear communication and friendship and, fun things along with educational things, that's having that kind of communication and feedback, I think, is what's going to really make it enjoyable for everybody.
Thank you, guys. We have a few questions that just came into the chat. Our first one is from Alyssa, who said, I'd love to hear from Tony about Goddard. I've heard it's an unschooling-ish college.
Yes, Goddard College is a very unschooling-ish college. the undergraduate program, more so than the rest, though all are much less structured than a standard degree. To give you the short rundown, there are no grades, no tests, no standard curriculum, but it is an accredited college. Undergraduates have a lot of control about what they study. They basically formulate their own curriculum within the context of having a mentor / also the gentle framework that the college is set up to meet the needs of the accrediting body. It also has a 100% acceptance rate for various reasons, including that they philosophically believe that just everyone who intends to go on a learning journey should have that opportunity. And they, I'll just say this, we desperately need more students, and it's a wonderful thing that needs to stay alive. So here's my plug for Goddard, because we really need the help.
All right, thank you very much, Tony. Our next one is from Rachel, who asks, in what way do you feel that unschooling was adventurous in your launch to adulthood? Have you ever felt limited by your educational background?
I believe that was advantageous in your launch to adulthood, just for clarification there. I think a big part of it was knowing and feeling comfortable talking with adults from a young age. Being raised by parents who treat you with respect, and as an intelligent being, you learn to discuss and relate to not only adults but kids from any age, not just your own age. So that's something I've noticed a lot, is just that sort of comfort that you tend to have more so about just interacting with adults and people who aren't just the same age as you, because you're not really seeing them as sort of authority figures to be avoided in every situation. So I think that was very helpful, and something that I've heard a lot of people notice sort of about us is that, oh, your kids aren't scared to talk to me, or they're not avoiding talking with the adults. So I think that's very helpful in the communication and networking that is key with moving into adulthood.
I also think, and I think that the parents end up talking about this more, but in terms of self-regulation, I think our society sort of thinks that forcing kids to do X, Y, and Z is going to result in self-motivated and kids with good self-control, and that's not necessarily the case. So I think I've just found in my particular experience, moving from whether it's moving into a job situation or college or living on my own, I think I've had a little less trouble with the self-regulation and needing that sort of motivation and discipline than maybe kids who are getting sort of thrown out on their own for the first time.
I have found very similar to both of yours that it has helped a lot with how I interact with adults in my life, whether it be professors in college, other adults just around me. I have an easier time talking to them about either what I need or what they expect of me to be able to meet those goals. And with college in general, I feel I've had an easier time regulating when I need to study and when I need to do these things, because I feel that drive. I'm there because I want to be, not because I'm expected to be there. So I put a lot of work into getting to the goal that I've set myself, whether it be a quiz or the degree in general. I feel like I have an easier time. I've had other students come up to me and ask why, and then usually that's where the negative side of it comes in. Once I say it, then there's the negative side of what people will expect from me once I tell them how I grew up.
Yeah, I think I really agree with the answers that are here. I think that self-regulation is something that if you've grown up your whole time doing it, it is easier to do. I have noticed being more motivated than people in my college classes when I was in college, or coworkers when I'm at work, just because that is what I want to be doing, and that's where I want to be right now. So I really put all of myself into that. Strangely, I actually think it's advantageous in some ways that both me and my brother grew up unschooled, and we're both very conscientious of rules. It's kind of a unique it's kind of a unique thing, because you didn't grow up with a whole lot of rules, but the rules you did have maybe were really important. And so I think it's kind of advantageous that, you know, we're not stepping in on others' toes as much, or not having as much disregard for some of the rules that we have with our friends or in society, just because I think we kind of value that they're there for a reason. So it's kind of a weird contradictory thing, but I think it's good overall.
To offer a slightly different angle on the self-regulation topic, I think I'm not great at self-regulating a lot of things, but when I do give myself a routine and stick to it, it feels more gratifying because no one imposed it on me, and I came to it out of hopefully personal growth. So it's been like a slow process, and I still don't consider myself a terribly disciplined person, but the progress I have made, I would say, is actual progress, not imposed progress.
I relate to that a lot because I would say I'm sort of selectively motivated. If once I choose something that I want to do, I will go at it like 200%. But otherwise, I'm very selective about what I do. So it is, it's not that you're necessarily, as an unschooler, it's not that everybody will be incredible at self-regulation or 100% motivated all the time. Even just in how Julie and we took the same online writing course, and I would be very worried about getting it exactly right according to the rules, and okay, they said read this PDF even though it's the wrong landscape instead of being portrait, but I've got my laptop on its side and I'm reading it, and Julie's just like, oh yeah, I don't bother reading that, and gets a better grade. I don't know, but it's we have two very different styles. She's 100% in on a lot of stuff, versus I will be more selective about what I am motivated about. But in both cases, once we put our minds to something, we're 100% there.
All right, well, thank you guys. Our next question comes from Sarah, who asked, what is the most important aspect or aspects of unschooling in regards to being a tool to raise the next generation in a shifting and fast-paced society? And are there things that it can offer to this end that structured public or homeschooling cannot, or vice versa? I know that's a long one, so if you want, I can repost this into the chat so that you guys can see it.
I mean, the first thing that just comes to mind for me is resiliency, and I think that's a topic that's being talked about a lot now, just in terms of social change and social justice. And I think, again, giving your child that permission to learn how to learn and to learn to love it is going to help them be adaptable and resilient in a way that I don't think, if you're just constantly battling your child to get them to do things, I don't think they're going to learn that skill as well. And I mean, just moving forward in this society, I think we're going to need a lot of resiliency.
Yeah, there are huge advantages too in just the, so much of your life is directed by the support and relationships that you have around you and the opportunities that provides. So to have a relationship with your parents that is healthy and full of respect and trust and love and friendship is really valuable. And I think we see a lot of hurt in our society from just harmed relationships with parents or family, or just not the opportunity that to experience that trust and support. And so I think that just in a style of parenting that encourages your child to have that empathy and trust and respect is a really needed thing that that is valuable moving forwards.
I think having the flexibility to learn what you want it makes a big difference if you're talking about being ready for a fast-paced society. Just as an example, I was interested in websites and web design as a kid, and got into doing some of that in the 90s, and that wasn't anything that the kids I knew who were going to school were getting exposed to. So being able to direct your own interests can also put you at an advantage where maybe you are a bit better at using online communication than kids who aren't being exposed to that in a public school setting. They're not catching up with the same rate that society's moving at.
I agree with what everyone said, but I'd also say I feel like there's also an advantage for the parents in that, because there's more of an open dialogue about learning. So the parents can be more open about learning from you, which can help with moving forward in society. Instead of just shutting down the new ideas, there's more of an open idea of like, oh, they could teach me this, and I could learn more about this issue or this issue. And it's not like a confrontation, like, I think you're being a bad person because of this. It's like, I know that you would want to know about this, and here's how you can move forward in being a better person for other people without it being like an attack on a character or like talking back or, I don't know, an attack on their character.
I think one thing that unschooling provides and can instill in a child that would not necessarily be felt in a traditional schooling environment is that when, given the necessities and determinisms of the world that we live in, allowing your child to grow up in a space which is separate from authoritarian factors, which allows them to have the freedom to follow their passions, which isn't necessarily going to happen in a traditional educational space, will help them be more skeptical of the outside world once they come more into the forefront of those demands of capitalism and colonialism and the world that we live in, and will help them maintain a more skeptical lens that will be valuable when examining the structures of the world they live in, but that it fostered first in a space of freedom.
Thank you, guys. Our next question comes from Lexi, who asks, as a parent, how do I know when I should be supporting them in their change to adulthood? I don't want to hold my kids back, and I don't want to push them too much.
That's kind of a tough one to answer, but I think it's a balance of really empowering them to be their best selves, and making sure they know how resilient and strong and great they are. I think just being able to say, even though this might seem scary now, I believe you can do it, I think would just mean a lot to a lot of kids who might be struggling with, what do I do next?
Yeah, I think there's a huge benefit to, having the support of your parents, and even if you don't necessarily know what direction your life is going to go, like knowing that from the small things to the big things that your parents are going to be there for you, that's a huge difference. And even, there's sort of this societal thing of like some parents will just kick you out on the street when you reach a certain age, and knowing that you have sort of a safety net will help you be more confident when walking across that tightrope of life. So I think having that foundation of like, my parents will always be there to help me can actually help me go be more courageous in in going out in life and trying new things.
I also think even just saying to them, like, I'm here when you're ready. I can help you with the next step, or I can back off and let you do it on your own. But know that if you need help, I'm here. But we don't have to do anything until you're ready to do it.
All right, nobody has any more thoughts on that one. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, have you always known what you wanted to do, or during the teenage years, did you need time to explore options? How did you find options or opportunities for exploring your place in the world without going right to college?
Well, I have not always known what I wanted to do. There were people who seemed to come out of the womb with a checklist and a life purpose, and I was not that kid, and still am not. But there's definitely a lot of just societal pressure that comes from, you know, the small talk conversations that you have everywhere, where people just sort of want to peg what sort of, you know, what grade you're in, or what college do you plan to go to. They don't really care about your future and what you're interested in. They just want to put you in a box. And when when a lot of people would find out that I wasn't going to college, or, you know, all of a sudden the questions would come, and I described it as the eye of Sauron was on you, just this burning light of judgment, because they couldn't put you in a box. And so that in a way provided a lot of pressure, and but it didn't necessarily lead me to discovering what I really wanted to do. That took sort of just, you know, it was really helpful to talk with friends and family about what they thought I was good at, and seeing that, you know, their feedback in that sense was really helpful, because and we were talking about this the other day, like, if you don't know what you want to do with your life, investing the amount of money that it can often take to go to college these days isn't necessarily the best choice. So I think, you know, in my case, I've been filming things with a camera since I was very young, but that didn't really stand out to me until, you know, until I really was looking at, like, well, what do I enjoy doing, and what do I want to do with my life? So that's having the support of my family was crucial, and the feedback of, like, you know, what do you think I'm good at? So having that conversation with your kids, and I wish that I'd started my YouTube channel when I was a teenager, rather than when I was 19, you know, because that progress, those extra years would have been very helpful. So if your kid wants to be a YouTuber at 14 or whatever, like, help them, because, you know, YouTube, it's, you know, I wish I had a moderator now, but encourage those passions from the start. Yeah, that's sort of my advice. I could go on, but I'll let somebody else.
I didn't know until I was around 16 and I started to realize that I wanted to help people. Specifically, I actually figured out kind of what I wanted to do from watching the people around me and some TV shows. I wanted to work with kids with autism with the philosophy that I grew up with unschooling. Like, I will do anything that they want to do, but I won't push anything. Like, if there was something that they wanted help with, I could just be there and I could be a constant helpful presence. And I got to that by hearing horror stories from people in my life, family, friends, and realizing that I wanted to make a difference. And then after that, I ended up talking to my family and being like, this is what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And they helped. They were like, why don't we start with community college and get some of the prerequisites out of the way without spending way more money than I had to. So, like, get past math and English, and then we'll move on and we'll try to get closer and closer to what you want. We can talk to people who've done it. And just, I feel like having that presence and being able to, like, talk about it openly without someone being like, well, you have to figure this out now. Having someone be like, we can work on it together slowly. I was able to really pinpoint it for myself and explore it in a laid back way that made it clear that that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I guess to jump. Oh, go ahead.
That's okay. You go first.
Okay. No, I was just gonna jump in from the opposite perspective. Because from a very young age, I always knew I wanted to be a dancer. And so I think just as unschooling can give you the space to find out what you want to do, and whether that changes a lot or whether you come into that later or not, that's perfectly okay. But it also helped me just in the sense that because I knew what I wanted, I knew I could focus on it. And there were just a lot of things in my training and even in sort of the projects and the work I take on now that I wouldn't have been as able to do if I were in public school. And also, just to be completely honest, I don't think I could have handled, in terms of mental health, the level of training that I needed to do in the high school years while also being in a high school environment. I think that would have just hindered me rather than helping me. So I think that's one of the pros about unschooling, is that it's going to meet your kid where your kid is at. So it's not going to look the same for everyone, but it's going to get them where they want to go.
I definitely had no idea what I wanted to do and had a lot of trouble visualizing what life was even going to look like in adulthood. It was just kind of this dark, blurry, fuzzy, distant thing that kept getting closer. And so I kind of felt really thrown into adulthood when it finally came around, because I didn't have that clear picture of what I wanted to do. A lot of my choices were more influenced by what needed to happen in other areas of my life. For instance, I started attending college full-time because I needed to do that to stay on my parents' health insurance. So it wasn't my first choice, but here we are. And I just committed to doing the best I could. I wasn't sure that I could do it, but I ended up surprising myself and gaining a lot of confidence because of having that experience. But it comes from having a supportive family too, who's there for you and is also going to be fine if you decide this isn't for me and I need to do something completely different. Also, I don't know if this was asked more by a parent or by a young unschooler, but for young unschoolers, I think a lot of times people are looking at what you're good at and what your hobbies are to be able to carry forward into adulthood, as a career or something you're passionate about. But something to keep in mind is that you can definitely keep your hobbies as hobbies and focus on rather the things that you like doing on an everyday basis. And that might not be something as specific as, crocheting for a living, but maybe you're really organized because of that crocheting, and that's going to apply to a huge number of different things you could do. So you don't have to focus in on, I really like doing this one thing and that's how I need to make my living. There's, I'm sure, a lot of different things that you're good at that you can apply to that.
There were definitely periods in my life when I had a strong idea of what I wanted to do, and that at points those also changed depending on my interests. But through that journey, it has mostly led me to study various things in the arts, and more so when I got to college, widened towards things like philosophy and theology and politics. But now I'm more in a place where I kind of know less what I want to do and more who I want to be, which, full disclosure, does not necessarily give me good job training or skills to make money, but I think I'm happier for it.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to interrupt you guys real quick because we have a few more questions. I'll make sure we get through them all. Our next one that I'd like addressed first is, I am an always unschooled teen with a very small circle of family and friends and do not know what I should do for the next decade. It seems very difficult to step out into the world right now. What advice do you have for me? And before you guys begin, I'd just like to mention to whomever this teen is that we do have a Unschoolers only support group that is happening next week, and I highly encourage you to come to that.
I would, I mean, yeah, I relate to that. You know, as for the world situation right now, it's really disappointing for, I think, everybody on so many levels, but especially like, you know, I'm 22, you're supposed to be going out in the world at this point, traveling or whatever the stereotypes tell you, like something's supposed to be happening. And instead it's like everything's ground to a halt, or should be grinding to a halt. So that's very tough, and I can't imagine, you know, handling that as a young teen. But I would say, um, remember to stay connected with people who love you, and believe in yourself, and just, I would say, try a lot of things, and discover what, you know, what you enjoy, what resonates with you as a person, and keep exploring. You know, it's hard to have fun and explore in the world right now. It's a very scary place, but we all need to realize that with all that's going on, um, we need to remember to go easier on ourselves, because we are all processing this crazy pandemic. And so trying to feel productive at the end of the day, we need to lower our expectations, or how hard we are on ourselves, because we're also processing very fearful and crazy things. So I'd say go easy on yourself. Remember to do things that bring you joy. And, you know, music has always been a big part of my life. So, you know, I love growing up in a musical family. That always helps me to unwind. And there's nothing better than hearing Tony's guitar music through the vents at night and being able to fall asleep to that. So if music can help you, I definitely suggest that as well.
I would also say get comfortable with the idea of messing up sometimes. Sometimes the best way to move forward and to figure out what you want to do is try things. Even if they don't work out, it's okay to stop and try something new. It's gonna be really hard to try to find something if you're not trying different things. And I would also say, if you can, try to like have conversations with people who have all different lifestyles, careers, decisions that they've made. Like, just try talking and see, like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting to me, I want to try it. I one day, to learn more about what I wanted to do, I actually went to my dad's school that he teaches at, and I talked to some of the people who worked there, and they gave me suggestions on books, and they told me what steps to take next, and they just were really helpful, and honestly so excited to talk about it because it was what they were passionate about. So I got to have this like really excited person telling me all about something that they did, and it struck something in me that made me want to try it too. So if you can talk to people with all different passions and careers, it can spark something really cool and make it something you want to do without all of the pressure of like putting all your eggs in that basket at that time. Just try it.
I like Tony's answer before about focusing on who you want to be rather than what you want to do. I think at the end of the day, that's way more important than figuring out what you're going to spend your time doing. Are you going to, you know, keep your same ideals? Are you going to be a kind person? Are you going to be there for your friends? You know, those things, when you look back, I think are going to matter more than the individual choices you make. But that being said, I also really agree with, if you can get out a little bit of your small social circle. It's really tough to do if you know, you're nervous or shy, because I've definitely been there. But it can be really encouraging, because people actually are really helpful sometimes, and do want to talk about the stuff they're interested in. And so if you're even a little bit interested in what they have to say, you can learn a lot just by having conversations with new people.
I would also say, as someone who at times has had a very small or non-existent friend circle to many, many friends, is that don't be afraid of manufactured spaces. I think sometimes we wish friendships would happen organically, but sometimes I mean, I guess some of my friends have happened essentially because we were only told to be in the same space. There was no real intentionality about it, but it worked out. And especially in the pandemic days of Zoom, I think we'll have to acquiesce more to manufactured spaces, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I definitely have made friends who I never would have interacted in if it had not been for these artificial spaces that are now more and more being created.
Can you give
Oh.
some examples of what those manufactured or artificial spaces are?
Well, I guess an expensive one, but it is college of sorts. Formal or schooling does tend to put you in a place where you may be there for a common interest, but your elective math class, you're all just there just to get that done. But that doesn't mean you can't use that opportunity to expand your circle of friends and get to know other people. Because it is obviously wonderful to bond over shared interests, but sometimes just your interests may be really niche, and if you really want friendship, you may have to look beyond your niche interests to people who you really don't have much in common with.
All right, thank you guys. This is going to be probably our last question, depending on how long the answers take. And this is from Chelsea. She asks, how did your parents choose unschooling, and how did they handle pushback from friends and family? Did your parents have doubts with their choice to unschool?
My parents, well, my mom knew that she wanted to unschool from the beginning. My aunt unschooled her 2 children. They're grown now. But my dad had some doubts in the beginning. And actually, the reason he decided to go along with it is he went to the teen unschooler panel at NEUC, and he watched some of them, and he watched them interact with each other, and he just saw like their whole being and how respectful they were to each other and how they interacted with adults, and he decided that that's what he wanted for us. And there was some pushback from a lot of our family who wasn't so sure about it, but we were lucky we had an aunt who was in all of it and could help bring us in. I believe she was the reason we came to NEUC the first time. She told us to come. I think I was probably like 7, and I went pretty much every year after that till the most recent years. And really just being able to interact with the other parents there really helped him solidify his ideas that it was a good idea. He also worked in the public school system and didn't like some of the things he saw for the children there and didn't think that that's what he wanted. And he was able to make that decision with like being able to see it every day. But it really came down to just seeing the relationships everybody had and being able to help with the pushback. He was able to, my whole family was able to connect with people within the unschooling community who had gone through the same kind of things with their family and be able to be like, I know it's hard and I know you're feeling like you're messing up, but it's okay. It's okay that this thing didn't happen today. It's okay. And I think that helped a lot with the pressure from family for them. And just being able to see everybody like that they knew help them later in life was very helpful.
Yeah, our mom
Where do
still
we
might.
start?
Our dad started, or I should say, our parents homeschooled us first grade-ish, roughly, and it was just a slow transition just toward unschooling, and I think that philosophy very much resonated with our dad, who was our sort of main caregiver. Mom to this day may still have her doubts, but we're grown now, so she can't do anything about it. But I think there was a lot of pressure from family.
You learn the elevator speeches, and it's not something that I think anybody should have to learn, but it happens with almost any way that you are different from society. And actually taking the time to intentionally learn those elevator speeches and craft them until it's just something that you say that gets on, takes that part of the small talk conversation and just gets it to move along rather than letting it become an interrogation. That is very important. And I also think that it's important that you look at the roles. If there are two parents, you know, in your family who are unschooling you, make sure that there's not sort of this roles that happen of the one parent who's gung-ho for unschooling and the one parent who's got the doubts about it, because that doesn't allow the parent who's gung-ho to actually address their feelings and their doubts, and it doesn't allow the person who's doubting unschooling to come across as supportive of it. But that's a hard thing to do. We all have roles in our family that, you know, unconsciously come about. And so I think that Dad probably didn't get as much of a chance to address his doubts about unschooling because we would have this sort of pushback from Mom about, like, are we doing the right thing? And that pushback from Mom very much came from her wanting to be a part of the culture and society at large, and feeling that acceptance from other parents that she was, you know, friends with and stuff. So I would, you know, try and make sure that that doesn't happen, and also make it clear to your kid that if you're having doubts about unschooling, it's not because of the kid and how they're performing. You need to make sure that that you specify that and make it clear that, because there is pressure to perform and to succeed as an unschooler, if only to prove your relatives and every random person who's given you that interrogation wrong. You know, so make sure that as a parent you express that I'm having doubts in myself and whether I'm doing this right, but I'm not having doubts in you and who you're becoming.
Right, and just really quickly, I think two things when it comes to facing those interrogations or just expectations and boundaries. So you as the parent can just remember, hey, I have my expectations figured out for how I want my life to go, and I don't know an explanation to anyone. And then just setting that boundary of, you can even say to the person, hey, can you not question my kid right now? Because they don't actually have a right to, like, just randomly start asking your kids, like, can you name all the capitals or something?
Oh, how do you do math?
So just keeping your expectations clear and your boundaries solid can help, like, push back at the pressure.
I think my parents decided to unschool from reading John Holt mainly, and they both agreed that they had experiences in school that they didn't really want to replicate in their kids. So they were both pretty supportive. I think maybe there was a little bit of panic in teenage years that maybe we weren't at the same level as other kids our age. But instead of pushing, like, curriculum and schooling, I think that just led to more conscientiously maybe my mom sharing interests or sharing books that she was thinking about or reading. And I think that was okay. I think that was beneficial to, you know, just have a little bit more going on at that time when otherwise, you know, maybe we were floating a little bit, not really sure what to do next. But I think just, I'm completely losing my train of thought here. If someone else could take over. Thank you.
I wish I knew when to say that and just stop talking. I do live streams and I need to do more of that.
If no one has any more thoughts on that particular one, Mia had asked to hear these or read the elevator speeches you guys have come up with at some point. So I don't know if you want to briefly spiel that out or if you'd like to maybe post that somewhere.
So my favorite story, though, I'm in a college class. I hate this class so much. It's one of those required ones. It's a night class. I'm not happy. And I get a question from the teacher, tell us a little bit about your schooling, like, just to everyone. So they get to me, and it's like 8 p.m. I'm done with life. And I'm like, yeah, it's I grew up unschooled, which is a radical form of homeschooling that's about the child-led learning. And, like, that's all I say, like, 2 sentences. And the best thing happened. My friend, who I know, because we're both dance majors, turns to me and goes, yeah, same as her. I'm an unschooler too. And we didn't even know this. So as much as I hate the elevator speech, it was so wonderful to be like, what? You're unschooled too? Like, that was worth it. But it can be as simple as, you know, unschooling is a radical form of homeschooling. It's child-focused learning, and then just change the subject because it's no fun to be interrogated.
All right, I think that kind of sums up what we have question-wise for today. Emmett had a few things that they wanted to speak on briefly. I wanted to thank all of you guys so much. Devin, Drew, Alex, Julia, Tony, thank you guys so much for being here and for answering all of these questions. I want to remind everyone that we do have the Teen Unschoolers panel that is happening directly after this at 3 p.m. So please stick around for that. The Zoom link is both in our Facebook event page and also on our website. So I'm going to pass it over to Emmett now.
Great, thank you all so much. That was amazing. I always love this panel. It's so great to hear all of your thoughts. Everyone is so well-spoken, and so many of the things that you said are exactly what came to my mind regarding these questions. So thank you all for your time and putting yourselves out there like this, and continuing to, you know, stand in front of crowds and represent unschooling, even if it's a virtual crowd. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, so as Rhiannon mentioned, starting in 10 minutes, we have a Teenage Unschoolers panel. And then next weekend, as hopefully most of you know by now, we do have events every single weekend this month. So next weekend, our theme is Unschoolers, Young and Old. So we actually have, and Rhiannon mentioned this earlier, we have a closed space just for unschoolers, people who grew up being raised unschooled. And that can be a really incredible and moving space. So if anyone here is a grown or, I mean, I don't think we really put an age on it, but I don't know, old enough to theoretically engage about the philosophy, whatever that means. Unschoolers don't tend to put strict age limits on things. But yeah, if you have kids who are old enough that they maybe want that support space, or if you are someone who's in that position, please come to that event. It's gonna be awesome, really chill hangout time. And then we also have 2 other workshops. We have a College-Bound Unschoolers workshop, and that tends to be a space to just kind of talk through some of the nuts and bolts of going to college. Rhiannon and I both did. We'll be doing that one. And then there's a sort of career-driven unschoolers workshop that Alex is gracious enough to be helping lead and host that one as well. So that will be really awesome. Answer some of those questions. I know some questions got asked today that didn't get a chance to be answered. So that can be another place if those questions were about sort of college or careers or that aspect of grown life for unschoolers. Those are great opportunities to go and get those answered. The other thing is, as those of you who came yesterday know, there's a fundraiser along with these virtual events. NEUC has been such an incredibly important space for so many of us. Even in this panel, we heard stories about, I think Alex, you told about your dad kind of, you know, getting affirmed, right, by seeing some of these panels, and Drew as well talked about kind of how going to NEUC and seeing some of these panels really changed a lot of people's perspectives and philosophy. And so in an attempt to kind of keep NEUC going, even through this lull year where we are not able to have an in-person conference that has tickets, and in order to make this event as accessible for everyone, our fundraiser is totally, if you can, great, thank you, we appreciate it. If not, absolutely no worries. Our goal for NEUC from now on is to just absolutely make it as accessible as possible. So please don't feel pressured, but I am going to drop the link to that in the chat. There's that. And I'm also going to put the link to the website with the sort of booklet, I guess, if you will, for the rest of the conference. And that contains the Zoom links, all the information, including the panel that is starting in 10 minutes. So thank you all again so much for coming to this. We'll take a little break, hopefully see some of you at the teen panel as well, hearing some of that wonderful wisdom from our little next generation younger unschoolers, in a little bit of a different life point, but still super ready to talk from their experiences and answer your questions. So thank you all to our panelists, and thank you to the people who came. We had almost 40 people in and out of this room during this panel, with a steady 30 or so. So thank you for being here, everyone, and looking forward to seeing you all in 8 minutes or so. Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.